Hello students, I'm your zoology faculty Mr. Rahim. So today I'm going to continue with this chapter evolution from second PU. In the last class we studied about the chemical theory of evolution proposed by Oparin and Haldane. So now in this today's class what we are going to study is how the father of evolution, who is Charles Darwin, discovered the phenomena of evolution. So how did Charles Darwin arrive at the phenomena of evolution, which was something new during his time? So before Charles Darwin discovered evolution, or before he spoke about evolution, the people of olden days, they mainly believed in theory of special creation. Because in the olden days the science was still in its infancy, so there were not many scientific theories which could explain the origin of life. Hence people relied on religious books like Bible and other sources which tell about the origin of life, that is, God created all the life forms. So this theory is known as the theory of special creation, which was put forth by Father Saures. Now there are three important points in this theory of special creation. So the first one is that Earth is relatively young. It is only 4,000 years old. Okay, contradictory to the fact which we know today, that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. So that is the actual age of the Earth. Whereas according to the theory of special creation, Earth is not very old, whereas it is relatively young. So that is one basic belief of this theory. The second one is that all the organisms that we see today, all of these organisms were created long back, and from that time onwards till today, no new organisms or plants and animals have been added to the creation. So whatever organisms we see today, they were all created long back, and since then no new organisms have been added, which could be either plants or animals. So that is the second basic point of this theory. The third point is that whatever species were created by this supernatural force, what we call as a God, so these organisms have remained unchanged from the day of creation till today. So they have remained unchanged. So this is what we call as fixation of species. So fixation of species is nothing but all the organisms which were made by the supernatural power, what we call as the God, have remained the same since the day of creation till today. So if you read Bible, you know, the first man was Adam, and the first woman was Eve. Okay, so there also you can see this concept of fixation of a species, which is that man, the first man, Adam and Eve, who were made by the God, have remained same from the day of creation till today. That is, they have not changed. And not only humans, along with humans, other animals and plants, they have also remained relatively unchanged from that day till today. So that is the concept of fixation of species. So those were the three beliefs of ancient people, which were mainly based on the theory of special creation. Now, Darwin, before he could discover evolution, he had to come out of these three beliefs, because he was also from the olden times, which is from 19th century. So he was also under the clasp of these three beliefs. But luckily, his voyage on the ship called HMS Beagle. So the voyage on the HMS Beagle lasted for 5 years, and it took place between the year 1831 to 1836. So Charles Darwin was very young. He was only 21 years old, and he was working as a naturalist on this ship called HMS Beagle. So, as a naturalist, Charles Darwin, the young Charles Darwin, then had to collect specimens of plants and animals, wherever the ship took him. So that is what was the job of the young naturalist Darwin on the ship HMS Beagle. Now, Darwin was a keen observer, so he did not simply collect the specimens, the rare specimen and plants wherever the ship took him. So this is a map of the voyage taken by HMS Beagle. So you can see here the HMS Beagle, it went across South America, and then it went to Europe, and then finally it went around Africa, Australia, and then again it came back to the England. So this ship also took Darwin to this place of a special interest, what we call as Galapagos Islands. So the meaning of Galapagos is a Spanish name. So Galapagos in Spanish means tortoise. So because of large tortoises which are found in these group of islands were known as Galapagos Islands. So Galapagos in Spanish means tortoise. So luckily the ship also took Darwin to these small group of islands called Galapagos Islands. And Darwin, being a keen observer, he learned that the animals on Galapagos Islands were quite different from the nearby mainland. So if you see here, Galapagos Islands were on the west side of South America. So the South American land was the mainland, and he believed that all animals which are presently on Galapagos Islands should have migrated to Galapagos Islands from this South African mainland. But to his surprise, the animals that he came across on Galapagos Islands were quite little different from those of the South American mainland. Now, since there is a difference between the animals which are found on the Galapagos Islands from that of the South American mainland, that made Darwin think that, do animals change with time? Okay, so that is how the seed of evolution started to germinate in the mind of Charles Darwin. So if you see here, this animal is called iguana. Okay, so this is marine iguana which is found on the Galapagos Island, and this is the terrestrial iguana, land iguana, which is found on the South American mainland. So you can see there are a lot of differences between these two iguanas. One I will show you. The marine iguanas have got long claws which are absent in the land iguana. So because of the change in habitat now, so because of the change in the environment in which these animals are living, so these animals have changed over a period of time, and that challenged the very old ancient belief of fixation of species which the old people or ancient people believed. So this is how slowly Darwin started to come out of these ancient beliefs, and this voyage on HMS Beagle helped him to do so. Now, why are there these long claws on marine iguana is because these marine iguanas, they live on shores, rocky shores. So in order to have a grip and not to fall back into the waters due to strong tides and currents, marine iguanas have these long claws which help them to hold on to the rocky shoreline, which the land iguanas don't have to do. So they do not have the clause. So whenever the habitat changes, the animals also change with them. So this idea came to Darwin's mind, and he did not just observe these iguanas. Darwin was also captivated by the shape of beaks in this particular type of bird which is called flinch. So the Galapagos Islands also had these particular birds called flinches. Okay, so Darwin observed that the flinches on these different group of islands, Galapagos Islands, had beaks of different shape. For example, if you see here on this particular Galapagos Island, this finch is having a large beak. Or whereas on the other island, the other finch had a very long and pointed beak. So when Darwin was amused by these different shapes of beaks in finches, he wanted to know why these finches, despite being the same type of bird, have got different shapes of the beak. So when exploring these different islands, Darwin learned that the beaks of these particular finches have evolved or adapted to enable them to feed on a particular type of food which is available only on that particular island. For example, in this finch here, which has got a large beak, upon observing, Darwin observed that the large beak helps this particular finch to feed on large seeds which are present on this particular island. So he also wanted to know why the other finch, this particular finch, has a long and pointed beak on this particular island. So when he visited that particular island, he found that there are more grass and grass seeds available for finches to feed. So in order to hold tiny grass seeds, the finch is supposed to have a long pointed beak. So this is how Darwin learned that the different shapes of beaks in these finches on different group of islands is enabling them to feed on a particular type of food which is present only on that particular island. So, and also the finches would have migrated to these islands from the main South American land. So the ancestral, the great ancestral finch which would have migrated to these Galapagos Islands from the South American mainland would have had beak of just one type, okay, like this. But as the finches reproduced and competition increased, they had to explore other islands for food, and that is when they developed these beaks of different shape, enabling them to adapt to the food available on that particular island, and also it enabled them to overcome the competition by moving on to different islands in search of different types of food. So this evolution of different types of beak is not only enabling the finches to feed on particular type of food, but that is also enabling them to overcome competition. So this is how the idea of evolution started to germinate in the mind of Charles Darwin on his voyage to Galapagos Islands on HMS Beagle when he was very young, only of the age of 21 years, and the voyage took place between the year 1831 to 1836 for 5 years. Now, when Darwin explored many other parts of the world along with Galapagos Islands, he learned that the existing species of plants and animals share similarities with other species of plants and animals which are there in other parts of the world. For example, if you see here, this is an African elephant and this is an Asian elephant. So both are elephants, but they are slightly different from each other, and they are sharing lot of similarities with each other. So this is one common example of similarity between different species which are in different parts of the world. And also Darwin observed that the present day plants and animals which share similarity between them, they also share similarity with extinct animals which are no longer seen on the earth. Like for example here, this African and Asian elephants, they not only share, these are living organisms, they are not only sharing similarities with each other but also with animals which are no longer present on the earth. We call them as extinct animals. Like this is mammoth. So these elephants have been believed to have evolved from this mammoth. So mammoth is the great ancestor of all present day elephants. So it is believed that over a period of time, this mammoth in different parts of the world, in Africa it evolved into African elephants, and in Asian region it evolved into Asian elephants. So that means all present day organisms are all related to each other through a common ancestor. So for elephants, this mammoth is a common ancestor. But these ancestors are no longer living because they have become extinct and they were present in past geological time. Now, the geological history of Earth closely correlates with the biological history of the Earth. Now, what is geological history? Geology refers to the study of the different processes which have shaped the formation of Earth, and also the processes which are continuously changing the features of the Earth. So, all those are studied in the science called geology. The geological history of Earth closely correlates with the biological history of Earth. So, let us see whether it is true statement or false statement. So if you see here, the rocks on land, especially sedimentary rocks, they form layer by layer over a period of time like this. Okay, there are different types of rocks. So one type of rock among these different types of rocks is sedimentary rocks. So sedimentary rocks form layer by layer due to deposition of material on land. It is a very slow process and this takes place over many hundreds of years. Now, if you see this diagram here, initially when the whole earth was covered by water, the only possibility for life to survive was in water because there was no land yet. So because of continuous incessant rains, the life first evolved in the water. We know this from formation of simple biomolecules according to the theory of chemical evolution of Oparin and Haldane, that life first originated in water. And also the presence of very primitive life forms like sponges, coelentrates, etc., which are also exclusively marine, tell us that life first would have evolved in water. So since the whole earth initially was covered with water, the life forms which from which the life began were all aquatic. So if you try to dig into these sedimentary rocks, at the very bottom you would find the very first organisms which have evolved on the earth, so which are aquatic organisms like these fishes. So next, these fishes are believed to have given rise to amphibians and reptiles. So that happened when the water level started to recede and slowly land became exposed. So it is believed that then these fishes have given rise to amphibians and reptiles which started to walk on the land. Now that was not possible if plants would have not grown on land before these animals would have evolved, because the primitive atmosphere was a reducing atmosphere. There was no oxygen in this primitive atmosphere. So when these green plants, terrestrial plants evolved by photosynthesis, they released oxygen into this atmosphere, which made possible for the terrestrial animals which have evolved from these fishes to survive on land. So if you carefully see, there is a close relationship between geological changes and biological evolution. So until there is a suitable geological change, we cannot expect the biological change to occur in a particular direction, like what I explained you just now. So later, these reptiles are believed to have given rise to animals like these monkeys, which are mammals. So it is possible for us to go back into the time if we can simply dig into these sedimentary rocks. So if you dig very deeper, if you go to the very bottom layers here, the animals that you find in the bottom layers are very primitive animals like these aquatic animals, fishes, and then you will get amphibians and reptiles, and further on top sedimentary rocks you will find the remains or fossils of animals like mammals which have evolved recently. So it is possible for us to go back into the history of biological evolution. So the sedimentary rocks act like a book of history of biological evolution, and that correlates with the evolution of the geographical features on the earth. So because of this, we can say that the geological history of earth closely correlates with the biological history of the earth. Now, how old is the earth? So it was not just important for Charles Darwin to come to come to the idea that life forms are changing slowly with the time. But if you see, the old beliefs were, there were three old beliefs. Another important old beliefs which people believed, long back before evolution, was that Earth was just 4,000 years old. Now, Darwin also had to come out of the influence of, this important point of the old belief that Earth is very old. So that happened when on the same voyage on HMS Beagle. So Charles Darwin happened to see structures like these, landscapes like these, which is hard to believe that, that they have formed only in very recent past. So you cannot expect to see a tunnel through a mountain, okay, and believe that it is formed just hundreds of years ago. So because the old belief says that Earth is only thousands of years ago. So when Earth itself is thousands of years ago, how can you have a hole in a mountain, formed in such a short time? So that is not possible. So such a feature, landscape is possible only if long back a river would have been flowing through the mountain. So only that current or stream of river is able to cut the mountain into structures like this. And for that to happen, the water would have should have flown for many thousands of years. And this is another one structure here. So this is a mountain which is eroded like this. So why is this mountain eroded like this? Is believed to have been due to the flow of river through this mountain. So due to the water current, the sides of the mountain got eroded over a period of time. Now when Darwin observed these structures, it also struck to him that all these structures would have taken thousands of years to form. So that also made him not to believe the old belief that Earth is only thousands of years old. So Darwin also came out of the influence that the idea that Earth is very young. So Earth is not young. Earth is very very old, because these structures are an evidence that these structures themselves would have taken thousands of years to form. So that means Earth is really more than thousands of years old. So today we know it is 4.5 billion years old. So this is how the voyage on HMS Beagle made Charles Darwin to come out of those main two important ancient beliefs, that is, the species are not fixed, and also Earth is not very old. Now Darwin himself read a book by a person called Sir Charles Lennon. So this man is Sir Charles Lyell. So Sir Charles Lyell had written a book called Principles of Geology. So he published this book in the year 1799. So Charles Darwin happened to read this book on geology because during his voyage he came across certain geological structures which made him believe that Earth cannot be thousands of years old, but it is rather much older. So that created an interest in Charles Darwin to know about geology. So after the voyage, he read this book by Sir Charles Lyell called Principles of Geology, and there he gets a clear idea that Earth is not thousands of years old, but it is rather much older. That is because Sir Charles Lyell also found that the idea that Earth is only thousands of years old, too good to believe. So people like Sir Charles Lyell also influenced Darwin, to come out of the ancient beliefs, which helped him to discover the process of evolution. So in the later part, I will give you the list of people who influenced Darwin. So one among them is Sir Charles Lyell, who published a book called Principles of Geology in the year 1799. Now, how does biological evolution work? So it is all fine. We learned now how Charles Darwin discovered evolution. But how does this evolution work? So how does this evolution produce different diversity in living organisms, or how does evolution produce different life forms? So let us now look at the theories of evolution and how evolution works. So the first theory of evolution is here Lamarckism. So before long back, before Charles Darwin, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, a French biologist, proposed a theory of evolution which is known as Lamarckism. So Lamarckism is also known as use and disuse theory. So this is another name for Lamarckism, use and disuse theory. Now, what does this theory say? So, according to Lamarck, the theory says that living organisms have an internal vital force. So, all living organisms have an internal vital force, or it is also known as urge. So, if at all an organism has an urge to change, Lamarckism says that the organism will change with the time. For example, this is told by this very classic example of how the very primitive giraffe, was able to stretch its neck and increase its length of neck over a period of time. So it is believed that the great great ancestors of present day giraffes had a very short neck, which enabled them to feed on short trees which were abundant then, but due to change in environment, the short trees disappeared and only tall trees were remaining. So in order to feed on these tall trees, the giraffes had to stretch their neck. That is, they developed an urge, to have a long neck which would enable them to feed and survive. So that urge made the giraffe to stretch its neck over a period of time, and that is how we see giraffes with very long neck, presently. So that is the urge called internal vital force. So the other way of looking at this theory is the giraffe was also able to stretch its neck because it was able to use the neck. So it put its neck for use more. It started to stretch its neck. That is, it started to use that particular organ more. As a result, the organ developed. So that is why we call it as use and disuse theory. So this explains the first part of this theory. Use. Suppose an organism uses a particular organ more, then that particular organ would develop with time and it would become stronger and stronger, like this neck of giraffe. Now coming to the second part of this theory, which is the disuse theory. So the converse of what I told you just now is also true, which is suppose an organism does not use a particular organ for a long period of time, then it can lose those organs. For example, you can see the loss of organs, the limbs in case of snakes. So because the snakes are crawling animals, they don't have to use their limbs. They don't walk on the land, they crawl on their bellies. Okay, as a result, the snakes, the limbs have disappeared in the snake. So these are two examples. For the use, we use the example of giraffe, and for to say that if an organism doesn't use a particular organ, it disappears or becomes non-functional, we give the classic example of loss of limbs in snake. So put together, this theory is also known as use and disuse theory. So because the giraffe was able to stretch its neck, due to the urge, the neck developed, into a very long structure. And if an organism doesn't use a particular organ, it simply disappears and becomes non-functional. Now, because of these increase and decrease in size of organs, or due to development of an organ and due to loss of a particular organ, Lamarck said this is how organisms change with time. So if you see, this is the great great ancestor of present day giraffes, and this is our long necked present day giraffe. So it is believed that these long necked present day giraffes have evolved from these zebra like giraffes due to use of neck. Similarly, if an organism does not use a particular organ like limbs in case of snake, then it loses that particular organ. So snakes are believed to have evolved from reptiles which were walking on land. So because snakes started to crawl on their bellies, snakes lost their limb and they became a completely different organism. So this is how Lamarckism explains the process of evolution, and this was proposed long before Darwin proposed his theory of Darwinism. The theory of Darwin is called Darwinism. Now, what are the demerits of Lamarckism? Now, Lamarckism is, no longer believed, so it has no scientific basis. We do not believe in Lamarckism. So, what are the demerits of Lamarckism? So, the entire Lamarckism is based on inheritance of acquired traits. Okay. Now, there are two types of traits. So trait is any physical feature, okay? Like it could be height of the individual, color of the individual, okay? Any physical characteristic or character is called trait. So there are two types of traits. The first one is called acquired traits, and the second one is called an inherited traits. Now, what is the difference between these two types of traits? Acquired traits are those traits which are inherited during one's lifetime. For example, uh, getting tattoo on the skin is an acquired trait. Getting scar on any part of the body is an acquired trait. So acquired traits like tattoo on the body, uh, piercing of ear is also an acquired trait. Okay, so all these acquired traits do not get inherited to the next generation. So acquired traits are not inherited. On the other hand, there are certain traits like IQ, height of an individual, skin color of an individual. So these traits are inherited from parents to offspring. So such traits are called inherited traits. Now the Lamarckism focuses on inheritance of acquired traits. So the way it explains how the giraffe was able to stretch its neck over a period of time with many generations is that, so Lamarckism says that in every generation the giraffe, that particular individual in that generation, was able to stretch its neck shortly. Okay, so that increase in the neck was passed on to the next generation. So there, that individual again, along with whatever increase in length of neck it inherited, it further stretched it to increase it furthermore. So this is how over many generations it is believed, according to Lamarckism, that the present day giraffes were able to stretch their neck so tall. But the stretching of neck is a type of acquired trait, remember. Okay, so the giraffe was not born with long neck, so it had to stretch its neck during its lifetime. So stretching of neck becomes an acquired trait here, and acquired traits are not inherited. So that is where Lamarckism uh, fails to satisfactorily explain its mechanism of evolution. Now the acquired traits are not inherited. So this was shown experimentally by a man called Weizmann. So this experiment, which I'm going to show you here with mice, is called Weizmann's experiment. So Weismann, what he did was he took mice and then he cut the tail of the mice and he allowed these tailless mice, the mice whose tail was chopped, to mate, and he started to follow the offsprings, whether the offsprings will have tail or they will not have tail. Because losing tail here is an acquired trait. The mice was born with the tail, but it lost its tail during its lifetime. So loss of tail is an acquired trait. When Weismann started to breed mice by cutting their tails, he always found that the offsprings had a tail. So again, he chopped the tail of these offsprings and again allowed these mice without tails to mate. And he did this for 22 generations. So for 22 generations, Weismann chopped the tail of mice, allowed them to breed, and finally, at the end of 22 generations also, Weismann found that these mice always had a tail. So that means acquired characters do not get inherited. So this is how Weismann proved that acquired traits are not or never inherited. So since Lamarckism believes on inheritance of acquired traits, that became a major drawback of Lamarckism. So similarly here, we need not have to always, do sophisticated experiments in order to come to conclusions. So these conclusions can also be drawn from our daily examples of ear piercing. So ear piercing is an acquired trait. Okay, so but females don't pass on these traits to their offspring. So if at all a female has a daughter and the female, if at all her ears are pierced, then her daughter is not born with pierced ear. Okay, again she had to get her ears pierced if she has to wear these earrings or whatever. So piercing of ear is also an example of acquired character and it is not inherited. Foot binding. So in old Chinese tradition, females, they had their foots bound by tight cloths to make them look small and beautiful. So small foot in China, in ancient China, was believed to be a feature of beauty. Now, such females whose foots were bound, they are found not to pass on this trait to their daughters. Again, if you want to have a small foot for daughters of these females, again you have to bind their foot. So, foot binding is also an acquired trait and it is not passed on to the next generation. So, similarly, here is another example for not inheritance of acquired trait. So this is called waist banding. So the European women used to tie a tight band around their waist to make the waist look slim. So slim waist is considered as a feature of beauty in Europe. So this waist banding made the waist of females, very narrow, which made them look attractive. So this waist banding is also an acquired trait because the females are not born with such waist. So they acquire it during their lifetime by tightly, tying a rope or something across their waist. So this waist banding is also not inherited to the next generation. So the daughters who are born to this female will have normal waist if they don't, bind it. But if they want it to become narrow, again they have to bind their waists like their mother did. So these all examples tell us that acquired characters are never inherited, and the absence of inheritance of acquired traits becomes a major drawback of Lamarckism. Now coming to the second theory of evolution, which is called Darwinism. So Darwinism, as the name itself suggests, was proposed by none other than the father of evolution, who is Charles Darwin. So in the very beginning of the class, I explained you how Charles Darwin came across this concept of evolution and how his voyage on HMS Beagle made him come out of these ancient beliefs. Now, Charles Darwin, when he made these observations, please remember the voyage took place in the year 1831 to 1836. So, in these 5 years, Charles Darwin collected all specimens of plants and animals which he took back with him to his home and started to analyze. And after this voyage, at the end of his observation of all the species, finally, when Charles Darwin arrived at the concept of evolution, he was very old. So he published all his ideas of evolution in a book called On the Origin of Species, written by Charles Darwin, and this book was published in the year 1859. So evolution did not stuck to Darwin like the way Newton discovered gravity. Okay, so whatever observations Charles Darwin made on his voyage on HMS Beagle in those 5 years, Charles Darwin had kept a record of all that. He had even collected specimens of plants and animals which he would keep in front of him and compare why are these two different animals looking so similar. So he thought about this over a period of time. Okay, and he was also influenced by people like, so people who influenced Darwin. So I've already told you one name, Sir Charles Lyell. Okay, so he was also influenced by writings of other people like Sir Charles Lyell, which also helped him to overcome the old beliefs. So I'll give you a list of these individuals who uh, influenced Darwin. So I'll continue this list. So at the end, by the time he was able to come to the conclusion that there is evolution going on in this world, he was very old. And in the year 1859, he publishes his observations in this book called On the Origin of Species. So because Charles Darwin was able to publish his ideas in the form of a book, he could reach to people, lot of people, which is what has made him famous. So there are also people, who stumbled upon evolution just as Charles Darwin did. So I'll tell you the name. So this man is Thomas Malthus. So Thomas Malthus also comes across the concept of evolution, but he does not publish his findings in the form of a book. So that is the reason why they are not celebrated as great as Charles Darwin. Now, the Charles Darwin's mechanism of evolution had two important principles. So Charles Darwin said that evolution takes place according to these two principles. The first principle is a branching descent, and the second principle is natural selection. So let us now first look at what is branching descent. So this is a page taken from Charles Darwin's diary. So here you can see he writes, I think. So like I told you, Darwin, after his voyage on HMS Beagle, he was constantly thinking about the observations that he made on Galapagos Islands and all around the world. So he was constantly thinking, and he used to write all his ideas in his diary. So this is one such page of his diary where he draws a tree-like diagram. So what is this tree-like diagram telling us? So you can see here he is writing B, C, D, etc. in this tree-like diagram. Okay. So what he is trying to say is each branch here, what he is showing in this tree-like structure is an particular type of organism, or you can call it as a species. So all these different species, if you see, they are connected at this point. So that means all the species, different species on this earth, they are all connected to each other because of their similarities. Okay, so for example, if you see here, this D and this branch here and this branch here, they are connected to this point. So this is believed to be the common ancestor which has given rise to all these species. So this is the idea of branching descent, that from amoeba, which is a single celled organism, all other multicellular organisms have evolved. So from amoeba like organisms we have arthropods, which is an invertebrate. From there we have fishes. From fishes we have amphibians. Okay, from amphibians we have got reptiles, and then finally birds, and present day mammals. So this is the idea of branching descent, that if we consider the branches of a tree to be different species, then all these species are connected to the same trunk of the tree, which is what makes them look similar. Okay, so that is the concept of tree of life. Now, this is another man who influenced Charles Darwin. His name is Thomas Malthus. So Thomas Malthus was an economist. So Thomas Malthus, he wrote an essay. So this is one work, which was done by Sir Thomas Malthus. So he published a paper called An Essay on the Principles of Population. So there, Thomas Malthus discusses the effects of increase in population. So he said population, in this essay he writes, population increases exponentially, okay, whereas resources increase arithmetically. That means there are more number of people who are getting born, whereas despite the fact that the resources available to these people who are getting born is not growing at the same rate. Now because of this difference, because of this large increase in rate of population versus the slow increase in resources, so since he is an economist, he would talk about the prices of commodities. So he said that the prices of commodities will increases. So because of huge demand and less supply. So because now there are more people, so these more people will keep asking for more resources. So that leads to huge demand, and because of less supply, so because of more demand and less supply, the prices of commodities would increase. So the whole idea of this paper was to tell what bad effects the uncontrolled population growth can have on prices of commodities. So this is one work done by Thomas Malthus in his publication called An Essay on the Principles of Population. Now Charles Darwin also comes across this work of Thomas Malthus. So Thomas Malthus also becomes an individual who influenced Charles Darwin. So in the list of people who influenced Darwin, let us also write Thomas Malthus. Okay, so he takes the idea of Sir Thomas Malthus into his theory of Darwinism. So, this is the second principle of Charles Darwin, which is natural selection. So here he uses this idea of Thomas Malthus, what he mentions in his work, an essay on principles of population. So in he can see, that organisms also over reproduce. Okay, like this beetle, organisms also over reproduce. So every organism has just one intention on this earth, which is to produce as many offsprings as possible. Only humans deviate a little bit from this, or else the general goal of every organism on earth is to produce as many offsprings as it can, without looking at whether these offsprings have enough resources or no. It is only human beings who worry about this, and they plan their family whether to have one kid or two kids. But apart from human beings, no other animal does it. So there is a natural tendency in every organism to produce as many organisms as it can before it dies. Now, what happens is when these organisms over reproduce, just like what human population does according to Thomas Malthus. Now, not all individuals in this population are same. So you will have certain different individuals in this population, like in this population of beetles, dark colored beetles, you have some light colored beetles. So Darwin called these individuals who are little different from the rest of the population as variant. So this is what is the term given by Charles Darwin to these slightly different individuals. He calls them variants. Now, these individuals of the population are exposed to natural selection. Natural selection is the second principle of Darwin's theory of evolution or Darwinism. Now, what is natural selection? You can see here, all these beetles, both dark colored and light colored beetles, are sitting on this green leaf, light colored leaf. So when it is sitting on, all the beetles are sitting on this light colored leaf, the predator like this chameleon finds it very easy to spot dark colored beetles as its prey. So you can see here the chameleon is feeding on all the dark colored beetles, because the dark colored beetles are contrasting with the light colored background. Now the light colored beetles, which are the variants in the population, they get a chance to survive. So the chameleon fails to spot the light colored beetles among the population of dark colored beetles. So since it is unable to find these light colored beetles against a similar background, the light colored beetles are not recognized by the predators, so they survive. Now a common man would find it like this. So they would find that the beetles were all brown colored. What they don't observe is, in that population of brown colored beetles, there are also few light colored beetles like this here. So finally, one fine day they would find that all the brown colored beetles which were found earlier have now converted into green colored beetles. So what is happening in between this is, the dark colored beetles are becoming easy targets for the predator. So this is what is called a natural selection. So which type of variant is getting selected by nature? So predator is a part of nature here. Okay. So the light colored beetles are getting selected by nature simply because they have a variation which is enabling them to survive in the environment. The environment here is this light colored leaf. On this light colored leaf, the light body color of these beetles is helping them to survive the predator. Okay. So whichever variant, so in natural selection you cannot say which variant is useful. Okay, whether dark colored variant is useful or light colored body color variant will benefit the organism. So it all depends on the environment. The environment can also be it cannot be decided. So this leaf could also have been a dark colored leaf. In that case, the dark colored beetles would have survived natural selection, and light colored beetles would have got eliminated due to predation by this chameleon. So there is no fixed rule in natural selection that which variant, whether light body colored or dark body colored of these beetles is beneficial. Okay, and that is because the environment could be anything. It could be dark colored leaf or light colored leaf. So ultimately the organism which is able to adapt to its environment, which is able to utilize resource effectively in its environment, that particular variant will get selected by nature. Darwin called this as natural selection. So a layman would believe that over a period of time the dark colored beetles have evolved into light colored beetles. So it is not possible for one organism to convert into another type of organism. So it is not these dark colored beetles which are changing into light colored beetles. So this is happening through many generations. So those individuals which had dark colored beetles, they got eliminated by the chameleon, and the initially few light colored beetles which were a minority of variants in the population, they survived, and when they reproduce more, that is when you get a large population of light colored beetles. So this is how one type of animal changes into another type of animal. So change here, organism changing from one type to another type, is what is natural, is what is evolution, and that is taking place through this mechanism called natural selection. Now Darwin called these light body colored beetles as, he called them as fit beetles. These are fit beetles. So fit means, we all know, physical fitness. So fitness is nothing but strength. Okay, so he called them that these are this ability of light colored beetles to survive natural selection as fitness. So fitness here is nothing but strength. So only that variant which is having the fitness or strength to adapt to the particular environment can survive natural selection. So this fitness is also known as Darwinian fitness, because we are studying here this fitness with respect to Darwinism. So it is also known as Darwinian fitness. Now, how to explain this fitness? What type of fitness is this? What type of strength is this? You cannot define this fitness based on the variation, because I have told you in natural selection any variant can get selected. So if the leaf is dark, then these dark colored beetles can survive natural selection, or if the leaf is green colored, then the light body colored beetles will survive natural selection and the brown body colored beetles will get eliminated. So you cannot define this fitness as any particular variation in the organism, nor can you define the fitness in terms of environment, because environment keeps on changing. So whichever animal tries to match with the environment, that particular variant will get selected by natural selection. So Darwinian fitness is defined like this. So whatever might be the variant which gets selected by natural selection, this variant get a chance to survive. So that is the ultimate thing. Okay, so whichever might be the variant, whether light colored beetles or dark colored beetles, these variants, as a reward for getting selected by nature, they get an opportunity to survive, which the other beetles did not get. For example, in this particular case of light colored beetles which are surviving the natural selection, okay, the dark colored beetles have got eliminated. They are eaten up by the predator, whereas the light colored beetles which are matching with the environment. So the environment here is light colored leaf. On this light colored leaf, the light body colored beetles are escaping from the predator, because it is difficult for predator to spot these light colored beetles. So they get a chance to survive. Now, once they get a chance to survive, organisms, do not survive as it is. So what they do is, you give an opportunity to an organism to survive, these organisms would reproduce. And when they reproduce, they pass on this fitness to the next generation as well. So that is, these light colored beetles which have got selected by natural selection now, so they, after getting selected, they survive, and they don't just survive, they reproduce. And when they reproduce, they pass on this same light colored body color to the next offspring, so that they can also overcome natural selection. So because whatever organism gets selected, it gets a chance to reproduce, the Darwinian fitness or the strength is defined as reproductive fitness. So Darwinian fitness is nothing but reproductive fitness, because all the variants which survive natural selection, they get a chance to reproduce. And also the fitness is inheritable, so there is genetic basis for Darwinian fitness. Hmm. So the meaning of genetic basis for Darwinian fitness is that is the variant which survives natural selection is passed on to next generation. Okay, so the beneficial variant. Okay, so the here the beneficial variant is the light body color in the beetle. So that beneficial variant is passed on to the next generation when these light colored beetles reproduce. So that is what is the meaning of genetic basis of Darwinian fitness. Now let us look at this overall picture of theory of evolution given by Charles Darwin or Darwinism. So here, you can see the ideas from the work of Thomas Malthus, what he has written in his essay. So organisms over reproduce. So there is a urge in all organisms to leave as many offsprings as they can before they die. So that is called as over reproduction. And these organisms reproduce exponentially. Okay, they reproduce exponentially. So exponential growth will be two organisms becoming 4, 4 becoming 8, 8 becoming 16, 16 becoming 32. So this is after first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. So two organisms at the end of fourth generation, they would have become 32 in number. So that is exponential growth. Now, not all individuals in a population are all identical. So that means I have told you, like in case of beetle, in the dark colored body colored beetles, you had also some light body colored beetles. Okay, so there will always be variants in a population. So variants are different type of individuals. They are of same species, but they are of different type. Like in population of brown colored, dark colored beetles, you had some light body colored beetles. Now, when the population is huge, the resources are limited. So this is one thing. So because of limited resources and huge population, there is competition between the individuals for these resources. Now these resources can be anything, not just food. So it could be food, habitat, it could be opposite sex for mating. So resource could be anything. Okay, it is not always limited to only food. Now the resources become there is a competition for these resources because resources are less and population is growing exponentially. Now, who wins this competition? Who wins this competition? So only those individuals who have beneficial variation. So here comes beneficial variation. So in case of these beetles, I told you the beneficial variant is this light body color. So light body color is enabling the beetles to survive the predator. So predator is a part of nature. Okay, that is why the phenomena is called natural selection. So there is no individual who is favoring one particular variant here. Okay, so nature is through such individuals like predators. Okay, it is not always the predator. The selector is not always predator. Remember, so there the selector can be in different forms. Okay, so here the selector is in the form of a predator who is part of nature. So he is selecting the light colored beetles. So it is simply because he cannot see the light colored beetles on the background of light colored leaf. So these light colored beetles are the beneficial variants here. So those are the beneficial variants. Now only those organisms which have these beneficial variants, they are able to survive. So like in case of beetle, the light body color was a beneficial variant. So only those beetles survive. And what they do is they eventually reproduce. So they don't only survive, but they also get a chance to reproduce. So they eventually reproduce and then they pass on this beneficial variant to the next generation. So I have already told you there is a genetic basis for Darwinian fitness. So the variant gets passed on to the next generation. Now, when such variants, when such variations get accumulated in an organism over a long period of time, that is what gives rise to new species. Okay, so formation of new species or how one type of organism changes into another type of organism is what is evolution. Okay, so evolution also includes the formation of new species. So that is what explains you the origin of biodiversity. So organisms slowly change with time, and over these millions of years they have changed in so many directions that we have all these present day different types of plants and animals, flora and fauna, which is what we call as biodiversity. So this is how Darwinism explains evolution and the origin of biodiversity. So this is the idea of Darwinism. Now let me explain you natural selection taking example of industrial melanism. So this is example for natural selection. Okay. So the example here is industrial melanism. Okay. So we know James Watt, discovered the power of steam and he invented steam engine. So steam was not only used to run these engines, but it was also used to, run these machines, like in hand looms, etc. Okay. So that steam, to run these machines, required heat, and that heat came from burning of firewood. So whenever there is burning of firewood, that would produce a lot of smoke. So industrialization led to pollution. Okay, so this is the first thing that we have to understand. So in Europe, with the discovery of James Watt's steam engine, there was huge industrialization, and with this industrialization began emission of smoke from chimneys, which led to pollution. Now, this industrial melanism is actually a story of two types of moth. So here, before industrialization, when people surveyed, they found two types of moths. So one is light colored moth and the other type of moth was dark colored moth. Okay, so before industrialization, when people surveyed, they found that light colored moths were more in number and dark colored moths were less in number. So why light colored moths were more in number before industrialization is because before industrialization there was no pollution. So no pollution means more number of lichens. See, lichens are good pollution indicators. We know that. So lichens will disappear if there is pollution. So before industrialization, since there was no pollution, lichens were, more on tree trunks. The light colored moths used to hide on those, on the background of those light colored, lichens. So can you see here, there is a moth here present. So you can see this is its body and this is the wing of the moth. So why we are unable to see this moth against this background of lichen is because both the moth and the lichens are of same color. So it is getting camouflaged. Okay. On the other hand, the dark colored moths, are easily visible on this light colored background of lichen. So that is why the dark colored moths are found less in number before industrialization, because they were easy target for birds. So birds could easily spot out these dark colored beetles and hence their population was less. So this is about the proportion of light and dark colored moths before industrialization. Now let us see what is the proportion of these moths after industrialization. So after industrialization, the proportion of light and dark colored moths reversed. Okay, so light colored moths, their number reduced, whereas the number of dark colored moths increased. So before industrialization it was opposite. So before industrialization, light colored moths were more in number and the dark colored moths were less in number. So after industrialization, the proportion of light and dark colored moths changed. So now why the proportion of light and dark colored moths changed is because after industrialization, industrialization leads to pollution, which I told you before itself. So because of pollution there were less lichens now. So the tree is not covered by lichens. Lichens disappear from polluted areas. So that is why we call lichens as good pollution indicators. So absence of lichen indicates pollution. Disappearance of lichen indicates pollution. Okay, so presence of lichens indicates no pollution or less pollution. So because after industrialization there was huge pollution, lichens disappeared. So when not only that, lichens disappeared, the tree trunk also got covered by this black powder which was coming out from the smoke. We call it as soot. Soot. Okay. So the tree trunk was covered by black soot. So because of the covering of tree trunks by black soot and also due to disappearance of lichens, now light colored lichens become easily visible because the background has changed now. Light colored beetles are easily visible, you can see here. Whereas in the dark colored background, now dark colored beetles are less visible to the predators. So birds can now easily find out the light colored beetles as their prey than the dark colored beetles. So that led to the reverse in proportion of light colored beetles and dark colored beetles after industrial melanism. Now, people also, recorded the proportion of these two types of moths from rural areas in England where there were no industries. So, where there were no industries in rural England, people found that the proportion of light colored and dark colored moths was the same as that of before industrialization. Okay, so this is a very classic example of natural selection. Now, what you should understand here is none of the two variants. So, these are the two variants. So, variants are in terms of body color here. So, light body colored moth and dark body colored moth. So, at the end of natural selection, what we should understand is none of the variants are completely eliminated. So, this is a very important note point. So, at the end of natural selection, none of the two moths are completely eliminated. So, only the number of light colored moths came down after industrialization. Okay, but white moths were not completely eliminated. So, natural selection does not completely eliminate any of the variant. It is only that these variants, their number reduces in the population. So, that is a case study of natural selection, which is industrial melanism.